All right, perfect. Let me get this out of the way. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Our presentation today is a part of International Education Week for those of you who have been celebrating with the Office of International Students on campus. Everything got kicked off yesterday and will continue throughout the week. So this is just one of many great presentations that you can attend and learn more about international student experiences and what it's like to travel abroad. My name is Laura Collins. I'm the director for the Office of Scholar Development and Fellowship Advising here at Rutgers-Camden. We have an office that is fully dedicated to supporting students in finding external, funded, keyword, paid opportunities for you to have a variety of different experiences, one of which is international and study abroad opportunities. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. I'm going to begin, hopefully this lets me advance now, with a little bit of an overview of what my office is and how we support our students. And then most importantly, we're going to move along to a panel of current and past Rutgers students who are going to share their stories about applying for these different types of awards and what it was like to be in an international setting. Okay. There's a photo of me and my colleague, Jordan Myers, who joined us just earlier this year. And this is a little bit about what we do. So of course, as I mentioned, we help our students in finding external funded opportunities, but it's much more than that. We're dedicated and focused on helping you set goals, identify awards and opportunities that are the right fit for you, and really counseling you through that whole process. And hopefully you'll hear that from our panelists today. Our office has a reputation for having an incredibly long title, but it was named with great intention. And so we imagine our job is to support our students at every age and stage that they are at, and figuring out how we can help them set a new intention and reach that new goal. And so that takes shape in lots of different ways, depending on where you are in your course of study, including as an alumni, which again, you'll hear as well. We like to say, if you can dream it, we've got an award for that. And so although today we're heavily focused on our international experiences and opportunities, please be aware that OSDFA does support students in identifying other opportunities, including public service and activism, research, graduate education, and more. The opportunities that we're going to talk about today are truly for everyone. And so while some awards will target individuals who maybe are in their first year of undergraduate, maybe they are pursuing, planning to pursue graduate education or somewhere in between, there are opportunities out there for everyone. There's a very common misconception that you have to either be at a certain stage of study or maybe have a certain set of credentials, like a certain GPA, to be eligible for a opportunity like this, and that's not true at all. Our biggest piece of advice is really just not to discount yourself and to let us help you in identifying the awards and opportunities that are your best fit. So the term fellowship can be very intimidating, but we want to work on debunking that intimidation. These awards, so the term scholarship, fellowship, grant, award, opportunity, I will use them interchangeably, and that's intentional because of that, like, everybody is eligible for something mentality. I think the biggest takeaway, and the thing I always like folks to focus on, is that these opportunities are an investment in your future, which is why we don't really focus entirely on, the minimum criteria to be eligible, things like GPA, because a lot of awards are not focused on those things. They're interested in how well you fit the mission of their award and opportunity. And so, yes, some will have certain criteria that you have to meet to be eligible, but many of these awards are looking for you to tell your story as to where you're going, how you intend to get there, and how their foundation or organization can help you in reaching that goal. So as we've already discussed, eligibility is a big piece of this, but that's my job. So leave it to Jordan and I to help you identify whether you're a good fit for something, and ultimately, don't discount yourself from these opportunities. You can take it from one of our alums that awards are a really great way for you to clarify your goals, strengthen your writing, and so much more. There's a lot that goes into these applications that will vary by award in terms of what materials you have to submit. we are there to walk with you from the start to the end and helping you to navigate that process, make sure that your application has met all of the criteria for submission. And ultimately, regardless of outcome, our students time and time again will tell you that the process of applying is where the benefit is. So, whether or not they earned the award or receive the financial benefit, most of them have strengthened their writing, strengthened their connections with their faculty and the campus as a whole, worked more closely with peers, and saw a range of benefits. And of course, I can tell you this until I'm blue in the face, but these are some examples of students who will tell you themselves. Each of these individuals that you see on the screen here applied for an international opportunity with us at some point in time. And again, had a variety of different outcomes for those experiences. And all of them say they do it again. So I want to share a few different opportunities with you all today, just to kind of get you in the right headspace about this and see you may be getting excited to try something for yourself before we move on to introducing and hearing directly from our panel. So as I mentioned earlier, there are awards that will target certain populations. And so the Fulbright Summer Institutes is exactly one of those opportunities that targets first and second year undergraduates. This is one of those awards that does have a GPA requirement, but again, not all awards do. If you're a new first year student this year and you don't yet have your GPA, we can talk once GPAs are available in December, or of course we can start planning now. This opportunity allows you to go to the UK for 3 to 4 weeks at one of 5 different summer institutes available this year. You do not have to have any prior knowledge in the subject area to apply to go to that one institute. And you'll hear from a panelist today who had exactly that experience a few years ago. The Gilman Scholarship is an opportunity for all current undergraduates who have limited financial means or essentially receive a federal Pell Grant, which is more than 50% of our campus population. So there's a good chance that some of you qualify for this. And you can be planning to attend any international experience of any length of time, as long as you're going to earn credit for it. It can be a study abroad trip, it could be an internship experience, or some other variety. Our own learning abroad trips that are offered here in the spring do qualify. Most students who will be planning for those opportunities will apply for them in the October deadline in order to ensure they have the funding for the spring. But we do also have a March application cycle, which would fund any programs that are leaving after May 1st. So you do still have time if you are thinking about learning abroad for this year. And then of course, there's summer opportunities and more. So we can definitely talk about Gilman. And we have a panelist who will share with you their experiences. Critical Language Scholarship. This is actually due today, but this is a summer opportunity where students get the opportunity to go abroad for 8 to 10 weeks and to study one of 13 essential languages in those in-person settings. And then more recently, they've initiated the CLS Spark, which is an opportunity for students to study 3 critical language, Russian, Chinese, and Arabic, right from the comfort of your home. So there's no international travel required. The benefit of that program is that it gives you the opportunity to practice one of those essential languages that normally would require prior study, and you can do so with no prior study. So if you really want to learn one of those 3 languages, there's a good chance for you to do that this year. You can then apply to a CLS in-person opportunity, having met the minimum of 1-year criteria for those languages. Many of the 13 languages that are available in person, though, do not require any prior study. And so, for instance, Swahili or Portuguese, those are languages that you can pursue with no prior knowledge. And while you're in person and learning, you'll receive about a full year's worth of academic preparation in that short 8 to 10 weeks in the summer. And again, this is fully funded. So everything about your time away, including your travel, would be covered. Humanity in Action is another really wonderful program. This gives students who are interested in social justice and human rights issues the opportunity to go to one European city for about 3 to 4 weeks in the summer. This is open to current undergraduates, as well as graduate students and folks who have recently graduated, so a really large group. It also is open to international students, which I always like to point out when possible. A lot of the awards do have eligibility criteria based around citizenship. So this is one of those ones that's very open. And while you spend about 3 to 4 weeks in the European city of your choice, when you return, you remain a fellow for the duration of the year, working on your action project that is focused on those social justice and human rights issues. And we had a winner for this award in 2020. The German Academic Exchange Program, sometimes briefly referred to as DAD, has a number of different scholarship and grant opportunities for current undergraduates or those who are interested in graduate education to research, intern, or study in Germany. Specific award opportunity is called the DAD Rise, which is for our science students. And it does have different timelines and gives folks an opportunity to engage in summer work, which is a really nice option for those who are on very sequential course sequencing. But DAD has a number of different opportunities for folks at every different stage of study and open to all different disciplines. And you will hear from a DAD scholar today. The Schwarzman Scholars is another really wonderful program. This is a postgraduate opportunity. So for those who are kind of approaching senior year, who are planning long-term and interested in leadership, this is a one-year master's degree program in global affairs at Tsinghua University in Beijing, China. It's a very heavily focused on leadership and global enterprise and change. And I'm very proud to say that Rutgers-Camden just had 2 students complete the interview for Schwarzman Scholars, and we're waiting to hear their results. So hopefully we'll have good news to share soon. The Boren Awards has opportunities for both undergraduates and graduate students. So the undergraduate is the scholarship and graduate students are the fellowship. And for our undergraduate students who are in the STEM fields, you have the opportunity to pursue a summer opportunity, which ordinarily the Boren is for either a whole semester or a whole year study abroad experience that's focused on language acquisition in those critical languages. You're going to hear from a Boren scholar who completed this while an undergraduate, who's also on the board and can definitely give you some great insight in just a little bit. The Boren Awards are both due in January of this year. And so if you're planning a study abroad for next year, either in the summer or a semester or a year-long opportunity, now would be the time to meet with our office to kind of plan ahead. The Fulbright U.S. Student Program, I don't like to pick favorites, of course, but this is a really fun award to work on because of its flexibility. There are really, truly options for just about everyone. This is a postgraduate opportunity, so this would be for folks who are graduating or in a graduate program. So you have to have a bachelor's degree at the time that you are awarded. So you can apply as a senior and for after graduation. And this gives you an opportunity to spend just about an academic year, although there are some programs out there that are as few as 6 months in length and as many as 11 months typically. Where you can either engage in English teaching, so going to another country where you serve as an English teaching assistant in the classroom. You do not have to have a teaching background in many cases, nor do you have to want to be a teacher long term. This is really a program that's focused on mutual cultural exchange, and so that is your role. This is in a program where you can also apply to go to graduate school and earn a master's degree and receive funding for that 1 year. Many European master's degree programs are in fact 1 year. Or you could apply to go and engage in research. And so you can apply to more than 140 different countries for these different opportunities. There's something known as Fulbright flexibility, which means that really there just are so many options. If Fulbright does interest you, you'll get to hear from one of our panelists today, who is soon setting out on their Fulbright Award. And also, we're having a session today at 2 o'clock with the International Education Office, who's going to talk a little bit more about Fulbright, and I'll share more information about our campus process. There are also some probably pretty well-known names in the UK scholarship realm. So if you've always dreamed of studying in the UK, you might want to long-term consider these postgraduate opportunities, including the Rhodes, which would send you to study at Oxford, the Marshall Scholarships, which give you an opportunity to identify over 40 different institutions that might be of interest to you, the Mitchell, which gives you an opportunity to spend time in Ireland or Northern Ireland, and then Gates Cambridge, which of course would give you an opportunity to study at Cambridge University. And that award awards the majority of its opportunities to PhD interested candidates, but there are also opportunities for master's students as well. And as I mentioned earlier, there's also this very common misconception that there are not funding opportunities for our international scholars. We have a large number of international scholars attending Rutgers Camden, and our office does provide support to those students. We have a number of different databases and resource handouts that we work within to help you find opportunities. We feature just a few here on the screen for you, but if you're interested in learning more about opportunities that are specific for you with your variety of non-US student statuses, please be in touch with us and we'll be happy to walk you through that process. And without further ado, I'm very excited to introduce our panel today. So I will be going through and sharing a photo and a quote from each one of them that they have prepared for you. And then we're going to change our view so that everyone gets an opportunity to see our panelists today. Okay, so first up, we have Sheridan Waterfall. And Sheridan was our Fulbright Summer Institute recipient in 2019. And so you'll hear from Sheridan in just a moment. Sarah Philippi Field, who was a Rutgers Camden graduate who applied in her senior year for the DAD scholarship and then spent 2 years living and learning in Germany from 2019 to 2021. Orgelis Vasquez, who is a current Rutgers Camden student, senior, and who last year applied for and won the Gilman Scholarship, which helped fund her study abroad, the short-term learning abroad opportunity through Rutgers Camden to travel to Brussels and the Netherlands. Caitlin McGee, a 2021 Rutgers Camden graduate who has worked with me twice on a Fulbright application, and in 2023 was named a recipient and will soon be leaving for her Fulbright in South Korea. And Sechalela Tomi, who as an undergraduate student received the Boren Scholarship, and as a graduate student at Rutgers Camden has remained active with the Boren Foundation and their national board, and is a wonderful resource and wealth of information. So for just a moment, I am going to stop my share so that we can say hello to these wonderful people. So why don't you each take just a quick moment and say hi to our audience today? Sarah, I'll have you lead off if you don't mind.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah. I graduated from Rutgers Camden in 2019 with a degree in urban studies, and then I was a DAD scholar from 2019 to 2021, studying my Master of Public Policy in Germany. And I'm currently working in philanthropy. I just started a new job recently as a development assistant at Penn Medicine, and I'm really happy to be here and answer your questions.
Thank you. I'll kick it off to Caitlin, and I'll have you pass after that if you don't mind, Caitlin.
Okay. So hi everyone, my name's Caitlin. I was accepted for a Fulbright for English teaching assistantship in South Korea. So I'll be leaving in January to do that. So this was actually my second time applying, as Laura mentioned. The first time I applied when I was a Rutgers Camden student for an ETA in Israel. I made it to semifinalist, but unfortunately did not get it. I was able to go back to grad school to get my master's in library science. I also found my passion for libraries, and I decided to try again working with Laura since I enjoyed it so much the first time. So I'm really happy to be here to talk to you about the Fulbright program and my experience working with Laura.
Thanks, Caitlin.
And I'm going to pass it off to Sheridan.
Hi, my name is Sheridan. I graduated in 2022 with a degree in graphic design. I was a Fulbright Summer Institute Scholar at the University of Westminster in London. It was studying or global leadership in a universal world. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about. Laura definitely helped a lot. I appreciate her a lot. Use your resources. And I'm gonna pass it off to Cecilia.
Thank you, Sheridan. It's actually such a Lela. And it's okay. It's how it's spelled. And my mom is creative with the spelling. But I am a third-year PhD student here at Rutgers Camden in childhood studies. And as Laura mentioned, I did the Bourne in undergrad while at University of Pennsylvania. And it was my first time in Tanzania, where my family's from, studying Kiswahili in 2011. So I think being in this space always gets me excited to like apply for stuff again because you really can kind of create the experience you want, especially being a part of these institutions. So I'm excited for our conversations and people's questions. And is it Orgelis?
Yes, it is. So I'm Orgelis Vasquez. I'm a current undergraduate here at Rutgers Camden. I'm a senior and I applied for the Gilman Scholarship, like Laura mentioned earlier. I applied for that in May, and I got awarded some money for that to go abroad to my Netherlands and Belgium trip. That was a trip organized by the school.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all for taking a moment to introduce yourselves. And so I like seeing all your faces on the screen. So for that reason, I think I'm gonna, I don't know, withhold on sharing my screen again, as it's just the questions. And so if it's okay, I'll just kickstart with our first question today. So tell everyone a little bit more about what first interested you in applying for a scholarship or fellowship, and how did you learn about the opportunity? Orgelis, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So honestly, before the Gilman, I had applied to the Truman, and like a previous panelist mentioned, once you apply to something, you can't stop applying to other fellowships or scholarships. And previously I had done a UK trip to London and Ireland. And I wanted to do another trip again, but I didn't get as much financial aid as I did the first time. And Laura actually told me about this scholarship. And so I was like, well, why not? I'm going to do it. There wasn't a GPA requirement. Not that it was a worry to me, but a lot of things that I've experienced in the past have been merit-based. So I did like that the Gilman Scholarship was more personable. They just kind of wanted to see why you would be a good fit to be like a U.S. representative abroad. So I think that was the biggest reason why I applied. It was mostly for the financial aid. But the Gilman especially has what's called a non-competitive eligibility. And I hope to work in the federal government. And this non-competitive eligibility gave you sort of a time frame where you could apply to federal jobs and get a little bit of priority. And that was especially important for me based on the career that I want.
Thanks, Orgelis. Sechalela?
I can piggyback off of that. Thanks, Laura. Bourne also has that competitive, non-competitive eligibility. So if you do a Bourne fellowship or scholarship, even the Peace Corps, and you complete it, the Bourne requires a year of the service requirement. It's called the service requirement, or you kind of have to pay them back. I am still in the process of completing my service requirement, and I purposefully or maybe serendipitously held off because I was like, oh, I'm becoming more interested in working for the government. So that is really a perk if you're thinking about that, and like do some reflection about what that can mean. But I initially found out about Bourne at Penn because they were piloting the African Languages Initiative. So they had Yoruba and what else? Swahili and I think Zulu as the languages. And I was like, oh, I don't want to learn Swahili. I'm going to go anyways to Tanzania with my family. And I don't know, it didn't happen. So I was like, I think I was just compelled to apply, and I had to petition to my sociology department to like get academic credit for this. But I knew I wanted to study abroad as an undergraduate. And so I was able to plan for that, and things worked out. So if you have an inkling for any of these, I would say just start planning, talk to your advisor, and do it, because it can really open a lot of doors for the long haul.
Perfect. So you want to pass it to someone, or anyone want to volunteer?
I can
hop
go.
in. Oh, you can go,
Oh.
Sarah.
Okay, thanks. And then you can go after me, Caitlin. Thank you. Yeah, so my interest in applying for scholarships and fellowships was kind of two parts. One was financial. So I knew that I wanted to go to grad school, but coming from a low income family, where no one else in my family had really, went to grad school or anything like that, I didn't really think it was a possibility doing it here, or it would have been more difficult. And also I had caught the travel bug. So I did a couple of learning abroad trips thanks to help from Laura and some of my professors. So I needed funding to go to grad school, and I also wanted to travel. And I remember talking to Laura, who was my advisor in the honor college at the time, and she told me about a couple of opportunities, and she was really helpful with working with me to narrow it down. And otherwise, I don't think I would have ever thought of it as a possibility for going to grad school, because that's not something that's really talked about too often.
Thanks, Sarah. Caitlin?
So mine wasn't really financial, because Fulbright isn't necessarily like a focus on financial award. It's more on like the experience, unless you're going for study. That's definitely financial. But I was interested in applying for a fellowship because I was insecure about my background as a community college student. I didn't want to feel like I was missing anything by not having that 4-year college experience. And I wanted to show that I could be just as strong academically as my peers. I knew I wanted to apply for an international award because I love traveling and learning about other countries, but I wasn't really sure exactly what I wanted to do. So I went to Laura because I heard that she works with these kinds of awards. I think I may have seen her at an international event, and she had been talking about the critical language scholarship whose application had passed. So I went to her and I was kind of just like, what else do you have? What can I do? So she busted out her big book of scholarships, and we looked through them and decided that Fulbright would probably be the best path for me. They had 3 different options, as we mentioned earlier: study, research, and teaching. I knew I didn't want a research award because I didn't have any research experience. I didn't have any topics I was interested in, and I wanted more structure going for an international experience than just like, here's your topic, figure it out. Other people might really be into that. That's not really me though. I ended up going for the English teaching assistantship because I didn't have a particular degree that I wanted to study. And I like the idea of being a teacher in a more temporary capacity rather than a lifelong career. Coming from an English background, it's always been like, oh, are you going to be a teacher? Like, not necessarily. I'll do it for a little bit, but I don't want to full commit to that. Yeah, so that's kind of how it happened to me. If Sheridan, you want to go next?
Yeah, I think I found out about it from an email probably sent by Laura, my first semester freshman year. And if I'm being completely honest, I didn't think I would apply for anything or get anything, especially because I'm a first semester freshman. Then my mom went up to me and she had found out about it somehow, and she was like, "You better apply." So I went ahead and applied, and my original strategy was, I'm gonna find what I think the least people are gonna apply to, and she said, no way. So I ended up applying for, of course, the one that I was most interested in, the most passionate about, which was universal leadership. And I ended up getting it. But again, for everybody, even if you don't think you're going to get it, it's still worth applying. And throughout my whole college career, I've done that. I won a free trip to Germany that way. I won tons of sweatshirts, Rutgers swag, because so many people are thinking, I'm not going to get it, I'm not going to apply. So you already have that advantage. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I'm also laughing because I haven't yet started targeting parents, but I think you've just planted a seed, and now everyone's parents are going to start getting my emails too. Okay, so For our next question, and I think Sheridan, you actually just touched on this a little, so maybe you'll want to expand and then kind of pass it around. Was there anything that intimidated you about the process of applying, and what made you sort of persevere through those feelings and a little bit of apprehension in order to hit submit? We have a lot of students who will start an application and for whatever reason, those feelings maybe creep in and they kind of don't work through that. So maybe if there's any advice you have in there, that'd be great.
Yeah, so of course what intimidated me was the sheer amount of people applying. And I guess one of the main things that helped me finally get over it and hit submit was the idea that there's literally nothing to lose. You know, even the time you spent writing that essay, maybe you can take parts of it for another application. And I think also just remembering that everybody has something that's unique about them, and everybody has a scholarship, has an experience that is right for you. And they're gonna see that, and even if this one scholarship, this one fellowship is not right for you, you're gonna find your fit eventually, whether it's in scholarships, jobs, colleges, etc. You just gotta find that one fit, and that's all you really need. And then I'll pass it to Sarah.
Thanks, Sheridan. Yeah, so I think the main thing that intimidated me was that originally I thought that there was only one type of person that could win these awards. I thought it was someone that, came from a wealthy background and had a perfect GPA and cured cancer and started a nonprofit and did all these things. And I think what really helped me to persevere through it was I remember doing the application and looking at the DAD website and looking at all the past recipients and looking on LinkedIn and looking at people that had won it. And I saw, oh, wow, there's actually a really big mixture of different people's backgrounds and the schools that they went to, and it wasn't all Ivy League schools. And I think that was something that really helped me, as well as the great support from Laura. And she was definitely a cheerleader and some of my professors. But yeah, I'll pass it to Caitlin.
So I would say I was definitely more intimidated the first time I applied than the second time. So the first time I applied, something that really intimidated me was the amount of work that had to go into my application. Coming from an English major background, I was used to writing essays and submitting the first draft and being like, okay, it's done now. But I ended up doing many revisions of my Fulbright essays with Laura to get them exactly right. I think one essay had up to like 13 revisions on it. Don't let that scare you though. Doing the constant revisions was really challenging for me the first time, but I had Laura who was constantly reminding me of the deadlines, and I didn't want to disappoint her. So I forced myself to do the work, even if I didn't really want to. The second time I applied was a lot easier because I knew what to expect and I knew it was going to be a lot of work. So I knew to get started on it quickly because I was like, I'm going to have to do like 10 rounds on this essay. It's not going to be perfect for a while. And something that also really helped me out the second time I applied was participating more in the Fulbright group of other applicants. Through Reddit, I found like a Slack group of everybody who was applying together, and we really encouraged each other with our applications. And we also had like essay shares, so I was able to provide feedback on other applicants' essays, and they would look at mine and let me know how it looked. So that made it a lot less challenging for me. So I'll pass it off to Orgeles.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest, for the Gilman, I didn't feel any sort of barrier to applying. And I think that was because I had applied to another fellowship before that and got rejected. So I was over that fear of rejection already. I was like, well, I'm gonna submit. They can say yes or no. I already know what it feels like to be rejected. It'll be fine if they reject me from this one. So it was kind of just, well, why not type of thing. And I think like Caitlin mentioned too, it was also a thing of like, I don't want to disappoint Laura, so I'm just gonna go through with it. Because you're in so deep already, and then towards the end you feel like just giving up because it is a lot of work for any fellowship. And then you do kind of get that doubt in your head, like maybe I'm not gonna get it, maybe there's too many people applying that are better candidates than me. But then because Laura's over here helping you, has dedicated so much time as well as you, it's like you don't want to disappoint her or yourself. But honestly, with this one, it wasn't necessarily challenging. This recent one I just applied to, that one was a little bit more challenging to submit. It was a little bit more of a personal fellowship. It was for immigrants, so it touched a little bit on like my personal life, and that was a little harder because, as other people have mentioned, you feel like you're not necessarily adequate or the adequate candidate for these fellowships since they are national, and this one specifically, they are international, so there's people all over the globe applying. But like it was already mentioned, every person has something unique about them that the panel that does review all these applications, they notice it. So even the smallest things that you might be like, oh, they're not gonna care about that, they will care about it because everyone's different. They take everything into consideration. So it's honestly just getting past that barrier of like rejection and doubt. Once it's easier if you had already gotten rejected because you're like, well, I can just reject it again. But that doubt, it's just like a constant like thing every day that you have to just tell yourself, no, I can do it. It'll be fine. So I think that's mostly what helped me with the other two. But yeah, I'll pass it on to, I'm so sorry if I butcher your name.
How about if I interject really quickly
Yes.
before we hand it off to Sechalela? I want to
Sechalela.
just reiterate or for the record, for all of my past and future applicants, there is nothing that you could do to disappoint me. I am always so proud of you all just for showing up for yourselves, taking this chance and opportunity, and whether or not you make it to submit, my investment is just in you as people. So I appreciate that you hold me in such high regard, but I promise you, both myself and my colleagues, we all want to see what's best for you. And sometimes that's not persevering in that moment. But we're here to help you kind of address those feelings that you guys have been describing. So with that, Sechalela, tell us a little bit about the intimidation that you may have experienced and kind of how you work through those feelings.
Totally. And I love that you said it's an investment in the people. I think that has grounded me through a lot of these applications over the years, because you really are investing your time in yourself in doing this very deep reflective work. And it kind of gets easier over time, but then the world is also changing a lot and you're changing. So that requires a lot of vulnerability. But in 2011, when I was at Penn, and even before that, like I didn't know Penn was the Ivy League when I applied. I was like, this is a school. It looks like they have money. Like, let me apply so I can get resources, right? Like I'm a first generation university student. So I was like, oh, this would be a good place to be able to do some things that I feel in my spirit to do. And that was true. But I remember applying. I took Swahili classes already. Penn offered that, and I was already in the classes and loving it. So I was like, okay, I can keep doing this with this scholarship. With Born, you can also design your own language learning experience. And even with the service requirement, you can kind of choose and design and create a work experience for yourself. They say on the board, on the alumni board, there's debate about how much this non-competitive eligibility, is serving folks who do these programs. But I didn't know about that, so I wasn't intimidated by it. What was intimidating a bit was the essay. And I remember, to Laura's point about involving parents, I asked my parents to read my essays. I asked uncles and aunties. I wanted it to like hit home. I wanted it to reflect who I was and who I am. And I remember my father was the one, and his birthday's tomorrow, but he was the one who was like, oh, in 1998, there were embassy bombings. So there were terrorist attacks at the US embassies in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. And he was the one who was like, yeah, that can happen with language. And like, if you get in the minds of the young people, you can control them, and that's and I mean, I don't know if I feel that way now, but I was like, oh, learning Swahili is a way for me to understand myself, to understand other people, and communicate. So that made it less intimidating, just to be able to have that reflexivity, to have that language, and to like explore what it meant to learn Swahili.
Thank you so much for sharing. All right, so we have 2 questions remaining. I'm hoping that we can cover these in the next 10 minutes so that we still have some time for our audience to ask you some of their questions. So thinking back to the application process, some of you have used the terms of like deep reflection. So tell me or tell our audience a little bit about something you learned about yourself just through the process of applying, never mind the experience abroad, and how it helped you sort of refine or reflect on your goals.
I can get started.
Thank you.
Yeah, so something that I learned about myself throughout the application process, and this has been a theme that's already come up, is that I actually enjoy being vulnerable. When I first started writing, I remember my application and my letter of motivation, I was mortified, like talking about myself and sharing things about myself. And the part of the application process that's really cool is it's kind of the one time that you get to talk about yourself and think inward and share with people, right? Like you have to write it, you have to share it with Laura and anyone else who is reviewing it. And I think that actually taught me that it's advantageous to share your goals. I think previously I was like, oh, I don't want to tell anyone if I'm applying because if I fail, then it's scary. But I actually learned that I really enjoy kind of sharing those thoughts and being able to look inward and kind of ping some of these ideas off of people. And that's something that I really did not expect before. I'll pop it off to Orgelli's.
I'm so sorry. I had to run to the bathroom. What was the question?
Thanks for being vulnerable and sharing with us. No, we asked, thinking back to your experience while you were applying, and you've applied for several things now, but what is something that you've learned about yourself just from the process of applying and not necessarily your international experience?
So I have very bad imposter syndrome. I know that's something that a lot of people can relate to. I'm also first gen, so it was a little bit worse because I'm already navigating a system that is very unknown to myself and my family. But something that I learned for myself through all of this is that I'm the reason that sometimes I don't know how to word it, but my success in that way is based on me. So if I don't apply for something, I'm not going to get it. I don't necessarily have my family's always very supportive of me, but it's a thing where it's like a self-doubt type of thing where it's like that imposter syndrome comes in where you don't think you're capable of it. But after applying for so many fellowships, I really am, and so is everybody else. It's just that doubt that you have to get over that have been able to get over, kind of applying through all these things, and it has translated really well to other things that I have done. And I think another thing I probably learned about myself, like I just heard Sarah talking about it a little bit, is being vulnerable. I will always keep things to myself, and if I do tell other people about it, it's very vague. But especially with this last fellowship I applied for, being vulnerable is probably the key. If you're not vulnerable, they won't see who you are. They won't see what kind of person you are outside of that paper, and that's all they have of you. So being able to just give myself to everything that I put in instead of being superficial and vague about my story or my journey, it's about knowing that they're not going to judge you for it. No one else is going to judge you for it. And on the contrary, they're going to be a lot more supportive of you because you're taking these next steps to put yourself out there. And I think that putting myself out there was something that I learned to do throughout this process because I wouldn't. And now that I do, it's not just the fellowships, but it's everything. The more you put yourself out there in all aspects of your lives, that's what gets you the achievements that you'll eventually accumulate.
Thanks, Orgelli's. Caitlin?
Yeah. So I would say something I learned while working on my application is that I didn't really know what I was doing. Like I said, when I first started, I was insecure about like my background being like a community college student. Um, so something I realized was I guess I had a lot more than I thought I did, but I wasn't sure exactly where I was going with it. Um, and then the second time I applied, it was kind of like putting all together all those pieces for like the past 2 years. You know, I'd started off realizing like I have something here. I'm not really sure where I'm going. I was able to work on it during that 2 years, and I'm like, I have like a path now, and this is really reflected in my application that I'm headed somewhere, and it looks like I know what I'm doing, even if I'm still figuring it out to some extent. So it was really nice to, I guess, see my growth just through the two different applications for the same award. And I'll pass it off to Sechalela.
Thanks, Caitlin. Similarly, I think I've learned so much in terms of my, like, yes, not knowing what I'm doing, but in that process, learning about my political existence, like that I exist is political all the time in all the ways. So even being an international student or a non-US citizen, it's like, how am I situating myself in relation to this institution and to the world? So I think that has become more clear to me. And I think the second piece, which was on that slide, is just not to despise or kind of hold in contempt my own gifts, my own background, my own story. Because as folks have already mentioned, that kind of people say like authenticity and stuff, but I think it really is just like looking at yourself and where you come from and being like, that's the thing, you know, like that's the cheat code, that's the whole thing. And the quicker you can do that, I think the easier it becomes. So yeah, those two things.
Thank you. And Sheridan, you want to wrap us up with one thing you learned about yourself through the process of applying?
Yeah, I think applying taught me to be more helpful and, dream bigger. Even if I wouldn't have gotten it, it's still putting yourself in that position and telling yourself, okay, I think I could get this, and I think, everybody's deserving of it. Why am I not deserving of it? And I still take that into job applications today because, even if you don't think you'll get it and you don't deserve it, maybe they think you do. And just putting yourself out there.
Excellent, excellent advice. So with that, the last question I have for you all is to sort of share some piece of advice. You've kind of dropped lots of great little gems along the way. So thank you all. I want you to think a little bit, I mean, the world today is vastly changing, quickly changing. And so there's a lot that goes into thinking about these things and why this might be valuable for somebody. So as folks who have gone through these processes and worked through all these feelings that you've shared with us today, what would you tell a student who's thinking either about just putting themselves out there for any award, or more specifically focused on this international panel? How might you advise that they navigate those international experiences? Like you all today, you've shared, many of you, that you're first generation. A lot of our students are. A lot of our students come from the same types of socioeconomic backgrounds that a lot of you have shared about today. So again, kind of giving that advice in the context of who you know our Rutgers Camden students are and how you would advise that they kind of move forward. Anybody want to lead us off?
I can go. I think the biggest advice I'd give is really, I guess, create a community amongst the people who are also applying. And if you receive the scholarship with the people who also receive it, I still talk to the people that I went on my Fulbright with every single day. And I think no one's competitors, you might be going for the same thing, but it's still great to have that community and to learn more and lift each other up instead of, competing, which I think is great.
I love that.
Yeah, I was gonna actually talk about that, Sheridan. Definitely having a social support group. Um, and yes, family is great for social support, but I would say mostly friends, colleagues of yours. Um, for any fellowship really, because I still talk to almost every single day with the people that I applied to a fellowship with. I literally saw all three of them yesterday. We sat in here, and we all supported each other. We all critiqued each other's things because we want each other to succeed. If I don't, I want them to. And aside from that social support, I think it's something that I just touched on. If somebody was came to me and said, I'm thinking about applying, I would just say, do it. It's, if you get rejected, you get rejected. It's fine. Like that just gives you almost like a callus to then go and apply to another one. And that all comes obviously with some practice, and you have to experience these things to be able to sit here and say, just do it. But it really just comes down to that. It's just submit it. You don't know what's going to happen. Once you submit, it's kind of out of your hands, and then whatever is meant for you is meant for you.
Thanks, Jellies.
I guess I can kind of hop in. So just to echo what everybody's been saying throughout the whole panel, give it a try anyway. Even if you don't know exactly what you want, it's okay to come to the Office of Scholar Development and Fellowship Advising and say, I'm not really sure what I want, but I want something. And they'll help find something that fits you. And even if you don't really know what your goals are, there's definitely something in you that they can work with and make into a strong application. You know, there's always something there. And even if you apply and don't get it, they say like, oh, you know, you can use some of your application materials for other things. I think that's completely true. My application to graduate school, I was able to modify my personal statement for that. So these things can be used again for other things that you work on, graduate school, cover letters for jobs. You know, they really are applicable to other things.
Yeah, I would also say just staying organized throughout the process. It really helped that Lauren and I remember we scheduled check-ins every couple of weeks, and I kind of gave myself an earlier deadline than the actual deadline. And it really came in handy, especially if you're doing a really lengthy application like the DAD, where there's a lot of components. And I had actually met classmates afterwards who had applied and got rejected for very small things like, you know, missing a document or missing a paper. And I think that also set me up for success actually going internationally. So when I was starting the moving process to Germany and applying to university and things like that, kind of keeping that those organizational skills really set me up for success in the future.
Perfect. I think that leaves us with Sechalela. We get everybody.
I think so, yes. I love to be organized. Yes. I might just have to piggyback off of that. The organization is really critical, like keeping folders in check, keeping your documents together. The programs can ask for a lot, and even in terms of follow-up and just doing things afterwards. So do stay organized. And maybe just to reiterate, like, it can be very political. I don't know. I think that does ground me in these ventures, that it's not random, but at the same time, I don't have to force myself to be something that I'm not, right? So my way of showing up is to apply, is to just put my name in there, because that is how I show gratitude for people who came before me and couldn't do that. So yeah, and that helps me to stay organized. So apply.
All right. Thank you all so much for sharing those pieces of wisdom from your experiences. So I do want to open it up and let folks who are here have the opportunity to ask questions if they have any. So the floor is open for anyone who'd like to either come off camera, put your message in the chat, raise your hand, whatever feels like a good fit for you. We're open. And while we do that, I will go ahead and share my screen quickly just so you guys have some follow-up information. But please don't hesitate to interrupt or share your thoughts. And so give me one sec. I'm going to put this up for everyone.
While we're waiting on questions, I guess I'll just add to the last question that we went through. If something that's holding you back is the idea of getting references because you're worried about like your relationship with people that you have, I wouldn't let that stop you. You might have a better relationship with your professors than you think you do. And also, they're used to putting in references for these sorts of things. So, this isn't going to be anything out of the ordinary for them. You can also use your employers, past employers that you have, volunteer leaders. There's a lot of people out there that you could use for references, even if it feels weird asking. They're totally going to be fine with it.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Caitlin. One, it's relevant to what's on the screen here, of course, right? So making connections with faculty and staff, but really one of the biggest things that I hear from students is like who to ask. And those people that are throughout your life all are part of your story. So I think we've heard a lot of that today. So for instance, like a Fulbright Summer Institute, if you're a first year college student, you might feel like I don't have faculty who I can ask this for yet. Like no one has known me longer than, a few weeks. And that's okay. It's okay to call upon the people that have shaped you up until this point. And so that may be relevant, or you may not have deep connections with a faculty member yet for any number of reasons. But you have a really meaningful connection with somebody from your community, a religious organization, a sports organization, a prior employer. Those are all valuable voices that can come to the table. And so one of the things I advise applicants most is to sustain meaningful connections. So if you've cared about something at a point in time in your life, just because you've moved on to a new role, position, or whatever it may be, sometimes you can maintain that some level of activity and some connection to that. And that's really going to show up a lot in your applications. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, feel free. But in the meantime, I do have our interest form up on the screen. So if any of the things you've been hearing about today feel exciting to you and you want to kind of get that process started and learn a little bit more, we have this very brief interest form. It'll essentially just ask you for a little bit about who you are and maybe what you're thinking about for yourself. As Caitlin mentioned, it's perfectly acceptable and encouraged for folks to show up and just say, I don't know, but this sounded exciting, and so tell me more. We celebrate that. And we also have folks who, like Secha Layla, when we first started working together, was, up to her nose in completing her application and just needed a little bit of encouragement to push over the finish line. So we welcome you at whatever stage you are. And I think our last slide here features our Instagram page. I always like to advertise this because while our website is a useful tool, we're a lot faster on updating and sharing information on social media. And it's another place where you can build community, as a lot of our panelists have shared today. So we have folks that we're always connecting through direct messenger. We share out information and then, we tag folks, so then you might connect. So it's really very common that you might connect with Caitlin or Jellies or Secha Layla on Instagram because you saw that they were commenting on one of our posts. So it's another really nice place to build community. All right. We are just about out of time, but I am certain that our panelists would be happy to share their contact information in the chat. So if anybody wants to ask them a more targeted question kind of offline, please feel free to be in touch with them directly. I'm also going to put my email address right in the chat if anybody wants to be in touch after this to talk a little bit more about something that may be of interest to you. And I want to thank our panelists today for taking time. Most of you are working, and so thank you all for taking time today to be with us. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you for having us, Laura.
Anytime.
Yeah, thank you, Laura.
Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank y'all. Good to see everyone.
Nice seeing you. Bye, everyone.
It's always nice to see the
Laura,
other
before
award
I
winners.
go, we need a meeting soon.
Okay. Gladly. I will meet with any of you anytime.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, bye. It was nice seeing everybody.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank
We'll
you. I hope I'll see you guys soon.